We have a speaker that will be speaking about the transition from Web2 to Web3 social movements, digital democracy, and plurality. Ladies and gentlemen, Noah Ye, organizer at da0. Some noise, people, come on! There we go.
Hi guys, my name is Noah. I'm from Taiwan. So basically, my context is a little different. Basically, in the past 1.5 years, I've been trying to bring Web3 technology, Web3 theories, Web3 experimentations into a social movement in Taiwan. And specifically, we're talking about this, at the center of all this is this community called da0. So da0 is an interesting community in Taiwan that has been around for 10 years. So if you think about it, the Web3 space hasn't been around that long, but 10 years ago, da0 already started as a decentralized organization, and it has existed for 10 years, sustained for 10 years already. A couple of interesting things that if any of you have read the book Plurality or know anything about the Plurality movement, then a lot of narratives in Plurality talks about da0. And the community basically, of course, first of all, it's an open source community. Everything's open source. If you don't like someone's project, you can just fork it, just like Web3. That's not so different. Another thing is, interesting about da0 is that the community never votes. They don't vote on anything. Basically, if you don't like something, your action is your vote. So you basically just do it. And so that's basically how they, what they've done in the past 10 years. They started as a group of hackers who are trying to open up government data for everyone to use to make sure all this. So, but in the past couple of years, the da0 momentum has come down a little bit. Yeah, so for us, we're trying to bring a little more momentum into da0 and see how we can help the community. So today's talk will be about what we've been trying to do for this specific community and what has been achieved, what have we not done, and what's my thinking process now, which is still in process about how these things should be going forward. So this was the start of, for context, this was the start of da0. This was again 10 years ago. It's called the Sunflower Movement, where the government was trying to push forward a bill that's not widely agreed upon with the people. So there were students, there were protesters occupying the Congress, basically, and da0 the community played a big role in terms of providing tech support, live streaming all the events, and keeping all the record, keeping all the data, so everyone has access to. That's how it basically started. And if you think about it, the community started with a force of anger towards things that they're not very, very happy about. It becomes a movement, and later it transitioned to something else, right? Starting from this starting point, starting from this inspiration of anger towards the government, they became later transitioned into a force of trying to change the society for the better with all these different kinds of open source projects. So if you look at it, there were like 10,000 plus like participants, contributors. Every single Slack channel is a project being proposed. Of course, not all of them are successful, but there are a lot of momentum going towards that direction. As you can see, some example projects will be like opening up government data or visualizing government data so other people can use it. During COVID, there was this mask maps that help people find masks. There was this fact-checking like web services to help you combat fraud on the internet and so on and so forth. And the underlying thing is, so as you can see, it becomes from one single mission, one single project, and it started to diverge, right? And they started, 10 years ago, they called themselves a decentralized community because they want to decentralize decision making. But later on, recently, they don't think decentralization in their context, not in Web3 context, would be practical. And so now they call themselves a polycentric organization, meaning that there's a foundation that everyone shares, but every single project has a relatively more centralized management, relatively centralized efforts that push every single project forward. And that's the community right now. And the base layer of the foundation that they shared is basically this bi-monthly hackathon. So basically everyone gathered together, everyone can come up to the stage, propose a project, find people who are like-minded, and do something together. So that's the context of the organization we're trying to help. So what we did was, 2 years ago, I went to this Funding Commons. Funding Commons is probably still one of the most inspiring events that I've attended in New York 2022. So we kicked off this community called da0 in Taiwan. And as mentioned, our goal is very straightforward. We're trying to supercharge Gov0, trying to supercharge this public good space, public good ecosystem, that open source community that everyone continues to make efforts to. So our strategy is also pretty simple, right? We're trying to drive global Web3 resources into Taiwan and use Taiwan or Gov0 community as a field of experimentation, and then export our results, export our learnings, so that can be a continuous effort, and for Taiwan to basically be a stage that people can run experimentations on. And these are some of the things that we've done. So as you can see, there are a lot. We've tried to research how retroactive funding can be utilized in the mainstream or Taiwan context, not even Web2, in government context, in community context, in every single public goods or ecosystem context. We're trying to see how DAO can really play a role in our society. What kind of role does it play? Why is this organizational structure important? And we did a lot of DID research suggestions to the government how DIDs should be done under a national context going forward. We built products, a lot of different pilots for DIDs. We've done a lot of toolings for DAOs. We hosted Funding the Commons in Taipei. We hosted Plurality Taipei, and education. We hosted several classes, lessons in the top universities in Taiwan. Talk about digital public goods, talk about how Web3 technologies, experimentations can be utilized in the mainstream context. So these are just some kind of, so this is one of the projects that we use ZK to combine with Taiwanese national IDs. So this is one of the projects that if you're interested, you can take a look at. Funding the Commons Taipei was conducted end of last year. So this was something that we were also a part of. So, but the question bears, did we really help? Did what we do, we did so many different projects, we did so many different researches, did we really help? So one of the things we did that we think we may have helped a lot is we drove this hypersearch experimentation. If you're familiar with hypersearch, this is like an impact certificate you give to people, and retroactively you can use a specific funding to basically buy back all these different kinds of impact as a reward to the community contributors. So this, a lot of people may know. We did infuse a lot of funding into the Gov0 community and try to distribute all these rewards into the hands of different people. We don't know, so the result of this is that because the Web2 community, Gov0 community, especially civic hacking community, they are not very receptive to Web3 technologies due to the previous scams and all that, all the reputation stuff. So, but we're gradually getting them to understand why this kind of funding distribution system, allocation system is useful, and getting them to get to know the tools and all that. So on that front, we did push a little bit. But so this year in April, Gov0 made a social post basically saying that we're running out of funding. We have to, for 10 years, every 2 months, we had these hackathons. But we're probably going to stop because we don't have enough funding. So in a sense that even if we've done so many experiments, did we really help in the most important aspects? That we are not entirely sure. So do we really help? Maybe just a little. How might we, if we are going to do this again, or if we do this today, what's the things that are most important? And there are two things that comes to mind. Of course, the first one, as you can see, is sustainable funding for these kind of digital public or open source community, digital public goods, infrastructures, or ecosystems. Another one I also think is very important is attention, because although people are doing all these projects that's quite interesting or serves the public interest, there's very little attention that's being given, even in the Web3 space, right? Being given into the public goods projects, except for a small amount of community members. So how can we capture a little more attention into that? And lastly, can decentralized community approach da0 as a decentralized community? Is this really the best way to help? So the thinking process is basically if the community can create achievements or projects that are really relevant to mainstream demands, mainstream needs, then, and if we can market those or capture attention those creatively, maybe we can find value-aligned resources. So I will explain this a little more with some examples. So one example of sustainable funding is that we talked about a lot at Pagoda, a lot at Code for Japan, in these different kinds of communities, is a model called endowment fund. It's not that complicated. It's actually very simple. So you amass a large sum of funding, and with that funding as principal, you used to invest in some low-risk financial assets, low-risk financial tools, and then every year, for example, the US Treasury bill, every year you earn back 4% to 5% profit and interest, and you only use that profit and interest to invest in these public goods infrastructure. So every single year you'll have that profit to invest in the infrastructure. So one example in Japan, they're driving forward from Code for Japan is that they're doing this for a joint effort for disaster prevention in both Japan and Taiwan. So one of the goal is to intend to raise $50 million. So there are like 10%, 5% money, like $2.5 million can be invested into these public goods projects, which more or less are open source or basically help the ecosystem. So this is one of the examples that for sustainable funding that can be a possibility in the future. Another part, when talking about attention to digital public goods, because these are very generous projects, and this is a book by Chris Anderson, the founder of TED, Wired, and all that. So he recently wrote a book called The Infectious Generosity. And the book is basically talking about how not only generosity, because there are a lot of charity projects that didn't capture intention. And in the public goods space, we always think that because we're doing something good, that people should pay attention, but that's simply not how things work, right? So in this sense, if we can use generosity creatively, if we can try to drive creativity into generosity, then this can actually be a business model. This can actually fit business or organizational interest in a way. Let me give you an example. So if you guys, I think most of you have heard of the brand Patagonia. And Patagonia, in a couple of years ago, in 2022, they basically shifted 98% of their shares to a trust called Patagonia Purpose Trust. And the purpose of the Patagonia Purpose Trust is basically just simply to protect the earth. So now 98% of the intention alignment now is basically aligned with protecting the earth for the Patagonia Corporation. This is interesting because no one has ever done this before. This is interesting because this type of generosity is being done in a way creatively that's an innovation in a way. So, and hence, Forbes also said that Patagonia now is one of the top brands that's driving the space forward and giving an example, demonstrating how these organizations should go forward. So it should be, I don't have more time, but should it be done by DAO? If you think about DAOs, the difference between DAOs and centralized organization is centralized organization going towards a single goal, right? But DAOs starting from experimentation, starting from inspiration, and then expand into different directions, different projects. So the key here is basically how we can diverge and converge constantly, like design thinking process, and to make sure different organizational types work in different contexts and for different purposes. This I won't talk about. You guys know Protocol Guild. We can learn something from it too. So the imagination, the takeaway is basically, so we have all these different kinds of public goods ecosystem that's trying to do good. We have all these digital public infrastructures. But how do we really support a community like da0 or other digital public goods systems to sustain, to thrive? I think sustainable funding with a lot of experiments and creative attention capturing is probably the key going forward. So yeah, that's me. If you need to find me, I'm Noah Ye everywhere. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Noah. Noah, can I ask you to stay on stage because we're having a panel with you next?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to apologize for butchering the